Λοιπόν, καλησπέρα σας. Θα παρακαλέσω να έρθουν όλοι πλέον στην αίθουσα για να ξεκινήσουμε αυτό το ιδιαίτερο πάνελ, το οποίο σίγουρα θα μας δώσει πολύ τροφή για να συζητήσουμε και με εκλεκτούς προσκεκλημένους. Για όσους βρίσκονται εκτός αίθουσας, αν τυχόν ακουγόμαστε, παρακαλώ να προσέλθετε για να ξεκινήσουμε. So, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests, thank you for being with us today. My name is Yanni Moutsios. I'm the news anchor for the Greek public broadcaster ERT, and I'm really honored to be here today with you to moderate this distinctive panel that has a lot to say with some very esteemed speakers that will enable us to have to highlight the importance of dissemination of values of cultural heritage. I was actually invited here to be part of this, and I actually had questions as to my role in this particular conference, because it's always hard to discuss something which is completely out of your scientific field. But in this case, I made an exception because Professor Antonia Moropoulou is such a great person, and she always organizes something which has a lot to say, let alone the fact that we're talking about the Holy Tomb, the work that has been done by the Greek universities and all the Greek scientists, and the way that this has been communicated to many people, not necessarily in Greece, but abroad as well. And that's why we're here today, to talk about the transdisciplinary discussion of the Holy Sepulchre and its rehabilitation. So allow me to introduce you to our esteemed panel participants. I will start with Ms. Tsitsanis Malidis Nicoleta, professor at the University of Ioannina, or Ioannina if you like, associate of CHS, Harvard University professor and rapporteur. Thank you very much for being with us. Mr. Katsarvelis Evan, from the Harvard University Center for Hellenic Studies, Programs and Event Manager. Thank you for being with us today. Next is Ms. Georgiadou Vasiliki, Director and President of the Directors Board, the National Center for Social Research and the Pandion University, correct? At the Pandion University, thank you. Assistant Professor Chrysakopoulou Silvana, University of Ioannina, Department of Philosophy at the Faculty of Philosophy, and member of the Cambridge Center for the Study of Platonism. And Ms. Labropoulou Antonia from the National Technical University of Athens, the International Relations Department, and the NTUA Interdisciplinary Team for the Holis Edicles Rehabilitation and Dissemination Support. Remotely, we will also have some esteemed guests, the Ms. Chaucher Joanna, journalist, and I do apologize for pronouncing the name this way. Mr. Hadji Theophanos Anastasios, the founder and owner of BCI Media from Canada, and Ms. Victoria Sanger, associate and adjunct professor of Columbia in New York. Now, I would just like to give the floor to our speakers before we start our discussion. And I would just like to invite Ms. Tsitsanou Malidis Nicoleta to begin with the presentation and then give the floor to the rest of the speakers. Thank you.
Professor Moropoulou, thank you very much. It's a great chance to participate in this conference. I'm really very happy that I'm a part of this. Christos Stavrakos, I'm so happy that you are going to attend this lecture. Esteemed participants, professors, Mr. Yannis Moutsios, thank you very much. The dissemination of values and narratives resulting from findings and restoration of World Heritage monuments is of enormous interest to society and culture. It contributes to education, awareness raising, and cultural exchange. It gives power to the sense of identity and continuity of human civilization. In today's era of constant crisis, climate, pandemic crisis, refugee crisis, troubled waters and territories, we absolutely need the positive agenda. And the dissemination of values and narratives about World Heritage monuments is a crucial part of the positive agenda that our society urgently needs. Language remains the great tool in this process, especially scientific and journalistic language. First of all, the discourse of the media, as well as the scientific discourse, can contribute to the promotion of cultural understanding and respect, the recognition and familiarity with the concept of cultural diversity, the respect for different cultures and traditions, and the highlighting of timeless stories that unite the past with the present and the future. The contact of modern societies with their cultural heritage constitutes and enriches collective knowledge and historical narrative. Language and the media, as well as social networking sites, can contribute to the highlighting of the educational and tourist value of cultural heritage sites. Language is also the language of museum tours. And here we always claim an attractive and innovative discourse that will be addressed specifically to the new generation. We need to design discourses that will evoke intense emotion and critical view at the same time. In addition, language can serve principles of strengthening social cohesion and identity, local and national. Social cohesion is formed, a sense of community is formed, and bonds between members are strengthened. Also, with the leading tool of language, awareness is achieved on issues of disasters, of historical heritage monuments. Media can contribute to this projection with more cultural content, documentaries, special programs, and articles. They can provoke public debates about the protection of monuments, encourage public participation, and shape a daily cultural agenda. Media can showcase successful results of restoration and conservation of monuments, which also provide a revitalization of tourism and a revival of local traditions and techniques. Media can highlight the stories related to monuments. They can connect the stories to contemporary problems. For example, heritage protection can be linked to issues of sustainability, climate change, modern solidarity, and the cultivation of values in general. Digital media, in particular, such as websites, social networks, and platforms, can increase the interaction and participation of public, especially the young public, with captivating and imaginative campaigns, photos, and videos, etc. We'll all understand that the media have the power to put pressure on governments to better protect cultural heritage because of their significant influence and reach of large audiences. At this point, I would like to focus on young people, how we can raise awareness of the young audience, which, in my opinion, remains the most demanding and the most difficult audience to reach. Here are some ways to reach and raise awareness of young people. What I suggest: creating hashtag campaigns where young people recreate, photograph, or make digital versions of monuments. short videos on TikTok and Instagram Reels with short narratives about monuments and historical findings. Selective collaborations with popular influencers who have an interest in history or art could be promoted as well. Augmented reality and virtual tours. Virtual games, quizzes, such as Solve a Historical Mystery. Live events with archaeologists on social networks. Photography competitions, challenges using modern aesthetics and trends. Finally, the participation of well-known artists or actors in campaigns for cultural heritage is proposed as well. This is a very effective practice which I have personally implemented at the University of Ioannina. In general, innovative, attractive and entertaining approaches are required, which will incorporate new technologies and create enthusiasm among young people. In conclusion, I would like to propose to the modern media, and especially public radio television, to increase the broadcasts related to these issues. In recent years, significant steps have been made in terms of cultural content broadcasts, but there is still a long way to go. And I will insist that the positive agenda belongs toward historical monuments, the presence of which act as a leading antidote to the dystopia of our time. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tsitsanoudis. You may actually wonder why we started off with the way that we need to communicate the rehabilitation or the achievements we actually make on rehabilitating those articles, those archaeological sites, and all the treasures that we have. Well, that was intentional. And I have to say that because once you know how to communicate, how to disseminate the message, then you can apply the strategy to any kind of issue that may arise. And the reason we're here today is to actually disseminate or communicate the message of how we achieve the rehabilitation of the holy edicule of the Holy Sepulchre. So now we'll go on I will move on to Ms. Lavropoulou Antonia, the National Technical University of Athens International Relations Department representative, who is going to talk about more into detail about how we can communicate the achievements made on the Holy Edicule. So here you are. Oh, thank you.
Will we come here?
If you like.
Thank you. So we will start with this presentation from the basics. As Mr. Muccio said, we need to discuss the channels of communication first, know what the message is, know our audiences, and then we decide, and we will explain what were the actual approaches that we had in the rehabilitation project of the Holy Edicule of the Holy Sepulchre. Once we begin with the presentation. So the digital transition is not that easy anymore. Yes, the message and the image is very, very strong. We can make the presentation without the image, but it's much better than that. So, as I said, we are going to start with the basics. What is the difference between communication, dissemination, and what we are trying to do through this rehabilitation project? So the communication is one way. We have a message, we want to promote it. We have a direction from the sender to the receiver. It's like posting art and not knowing who is going to see the art. So we have a narrative, the message is very clear, but we cannot assess if this message is shared. What is dissemination? What is the difference? So the dissemination is a two-way message, but actually it raises awareness among targeted audience. That is the main difference, that we have targeted audience, and that we already know that have an interest in the values of this message. So it implies a dialogue. It's like the artist, we said, we know who is, like in theater, we know who is the audience, and we have a small interaction. For example, within scientists, the main means of dissemination are this series of conferences, because we exchange our scientific approaches and educational approaches. And we can have different activities within science and society that actually creates this awareness. What is a holistic interaction, and what we're trying to do through the project of rehabilitation of the Holy Edicule? It's interactive. Ideas have to be exchanged. The stakeholders may not have the scientific knowledge, but they understand the values. That is the difference. It's not just a project. It's a project not just with a message. It's a project with values as well. It's a complex project, and it has values as well. So we have knowledge. We have to deal with knowledge transfer, with societal impact, and in the end, what we want to create is centers of co-creation. That is the basis of our society. I will provide you a simpler model of dissemination without values but with narratives. So at NTUA, we have open days. We recently had open days, that is, we opened our labs. And each year we have Researchers' Night at NTUA, that Professor Moropouli is actually the supervisor of that. What is the difference between an open day and Researchers' Night at NTUA? In open days, a lot of secondary school students come and they visit our laboratories, but what is highlighted is the university itself, the National Technical and Engineering University. Maybe the faculties can be highlighted. That is, the message is what is mechanical engineering, what is chemical engineering. And for this, you need science communication. So it's not knowledge transfer, it's science communication. While in Researchers' Night, we also have science communication for secondary education students, but mainly we want to highlight the researchers' work, not the actual institutions, but the researchers themselves. Like, what is this researcher doing? We do that through innovation promotion. So it's a different level. It's not just science communication, it's innovation promotion. So let's go to the model of dissemination of values and narratives within the rehabilitation project in the Holy Sepulchre. So as you see, we have the project, and through steps, we go towards transfer of know-how. What we did first was trying to raise awareness during the rehabilitation project through different milestones. So here you can see some different milestones. At first, not at first. Throughout the project, throughout the rehabilitation project, we had Professor Moropouli, actually not all of us, had continuous discussions with the leaders of the Christian communities to provide them scientific support for the decision making. So that was a specific targeted way of dissemination to the leaders to provide this scientific support. Now, the first milestone was Easter 2016, when the first scaffolding was created. So then everybody could understand that there was a project going on. So then we could start the fundraising. So our first audience was our potential donors and funders. Then we actually managed to create the on-site laboratory, both interdisciplinary documentation and monitoring, which actually worked as an open educational and research lab. We had visits from our university students at least in 2 semesters, at least in 3 times. And we had theses that were implemented both at master level and at PhD level, even an undergraduate level educational trip. So that was our audience, the students, the educational approach. Another milestone was the dismantling and removal of the stone panels, which were one of the, as you will see later, one of the first milestones to produce international media attention. But the main international media attention was achieved through the lifting of the stone of the tomb that revealed the actually holy rock. Then we had additional milestones, but some of them were very important for the local community, like the removal of iron frame. That was the first time that the Israeli newspapers took interest in this project, the removal of the iron frame that was there for 30 years from the British mandate. And of course, the main dissemination towards the world was achieved through the completion ceremony that a lot of guests were invited on site, but it was also broadcasted throughout the world. So we realized through these milestones that there was an interest beside the specific audience that I explained, that for the students, for the integrated governance, that there was an interest because of the values, because it wasn't just a product, because of the values, not of the narrative, for international media, for international audience. That is why Professor Moropoulou made a strategic cooperation with National Geographic Society, and the first big bang, as I would say, would be with the lifting of the stone in October 2016 with the cooperation of the National Geographic, and that is when a lot of international media got interested too. As I said before, some international media were interested when we had, you can see the work begins to try to save Christianity's holiest shrine. Now, and you can see below on the right, Harrods, iron cage around Holy Sepulchre's tomb of Jesus removed after 70 years. So you see different international audiences are interested in in different narratives. However, in total, we didn't touch only the Christians, not only the 2 million Christians through this international media approach, we touched non-Christians as well. So we made, we approached nearly 3 billion people around the globe because it was a different narrative each time. Another important phase of the dissemination was the exchange of knowledge with scholars. That was before disseminating to the conferences. The discussion started with Israeli antiquities authorities in their own annual conference back in October 2016. So that was the very first conference that this work was presented, was in an Israeli annual conference of their archaeologists, and they accepted the project. So this initiated a dialogue with other scholars. You can see that Professor Moropoulou went to Oxford. She discussed we started then transdisciplinary even from the very beginning, with theology, with historic libraries like in Milan. So that was the exchange of knowledge with scholars, so that they accepted this different project. And then we had the international conferences that were initiated, but then this series of conferences was initiated, and not only this series, but this work, where a lot of different narratives of this work were presented in a lot of international conferences as keynote speeches most of the time. That is, by the end of, not by the end, but when we actually delivered the project, then Europe realized that this was, although it was not funded by European funds, but it was through fundraising, that it was actually a European project, and it was setting future trends. So we were asked to present this project, although it wasn't funded, so I couldn't actually get an award for that. It was by then the European Year of Cultural Heritage, so it was presented in Europe as a pilot case for the European Year of Cultural Heritage. It started even from the beginning to set future trends. We realized that we had contacted most of our main scientific audience, so now it was time to come to the general audience as well. And as Mrs. Tzanoudis explained, you need new approaches for that. So that is why we created this digital exhibition of advanced technology in cooperation with the National Geographic Society. It was first presented in Washington, and then it was presented in Greece before COVID. Unfortunately, if we didn't have COVID, we would have been presented all around the globe, but COVID stopped it. This had different audiences as well. We had a lot of schools, we had a lot of groups that were actually intended for religious tourism, like the previous panel, for example, what we saw in the previous panel. And we also had scientists. We have prepared a lot of guided tours for scientists as well. So different narratives within the same exhibition, different audiences to different messages. After that, we said we had COVID, and we continued the research. We continued the project through research, through education. For example, the RESPECT project was the project that initiated this platform to act as an information system for all the data, even the data that we haven't processed since then, but we continue this research through the data that we have integrated in this platform. And we had an educational project as well, an Erasmus project called Edicula, which introduced some new ways of dissemination. For example, we created an educational toolkit. This toolkit was also targeted to specific audiences, like people in municipalities, so that they could use this narrative, this methodology in their own rehabilitation projects. We had curricular information, which is the audience are the master programs, how to transform, how to reform their own programs according to this rehabilitation methodology. We had hands-on framework, that is a workshop on site, and that the audience were also students, but also archaeologists in Jerusalem, and digital games for the general audience, for people from secondary school education to everybody who would be interested in learning a lot more about the rehabilitation. Mainly, of course, this project was known around Greece through the open lectures, because the open lectures have a different intimacy. You go there just to listen to this specific speech. You are invited, you know what you are going to listen. It's not that you are just hanging around and you listen while you hear the news. You go targeted to get the message. So you get more information. And indeed, this is not science communication. This is trying to explain to people the terminology, the methodology, and let them understand that things can be done, that this was work from a public Greek university, for example. Everybody gets its own narratives, but still it's targeted, and the narrative, the message itself is very strong. What is the difference now from the message that we have produced through the rehabilitation project and the message, the dissemination that we want to produce through the Evlogon project? That is kind of like an upscale of the dissemination work that we have already done. First of all, we have to understand that this is not just another project, as we said at the beginning. This is a project that has a complex and novel findings, and in addition, it has values. We are talking about emblematic monuments. And which are the emblematic monuments? The Holy Sepulchre Rehabilitation. We're explaining the innovation that has been produced within the Holy Sepulchre Rehabilitation. We don't have to explain the whole rehabilitation project, just the innovation that is being produced. The earthquake protection and rebuilding of Hagia Sophia, the achievements of this cooperation, the restoration of the Catholic Church of the Holy Monastery of Varnakova, which was the very first project that we tried to work according to the methodology that was produced in the rehabilitation project in Jerusalem. These three projects have two things in similar, that all of them are emblematic monuments, and all of them have cooperation agreements between the National Technical University or the other universities that are being involved and the leaders of this specific monument. And in addition, we have implemented non-ordinary and extraordinary methodology, scientific methodology. So what, and I'm coming to the end. So what are the differences? What is upscaling? Instead of just a repository, like an information platform system, we're trying not only to organize the data and manage the data, but to standardize the processes. So this won't be just a platform. We're going to standardize processes for other projects as well. The innovation produced is not going to be kept only in scientific level, but is going to produce knowledge. It's going to show that knowledge base, that knowledge, scientific knowledge, can provide this, can support decision making, and this is what the new trends should be. Trust in science. We have to remind everybody, especially in Europe, that trust in science can only be provided through scientific knowledge. So this way we can produce policies, not just wait for them to listen from us, but have them waiting for us to produce new knowledge. As we discussed in the previous panel, this is not just a transdisciplinary cooperation. This is scientific synergy. We're not only transcutting STEM and humanities, but we're also working to get it to a new level. We're trying to use theology and church and religion as well, not only for the Christian monuments, because these are 3 Christian monuments, even though one of them is used as a mosque, but to try to find what is the upscaling through this theology approach, using humanities and social sciences in order to create a new message. What is this new message? That we need to use education, that we need to discuss all together. We are going to find the new message all together. So therefore, the interdisciplinarity is advanced to a holistic interaction, and the aim of it is to connect science and society.
Well, Ms. Labopoulou, I have to say that I was really impressed because everything seems to be falling into place right now. We talked about the communication strategies that may be applied, but then you have outlined the ways that you have achieved that. And it's not only an issue about sharing what you have achieved with the scientists or the people who are really interested in, they are actually here, but with the public. And I think that really makes difference. We'll have more to say about that later on, but I think it's time now to move on to the way we share a story. Storytellers, storytelling, what is it about? And this actually relates to what we're talking about once we have the Holy Edicule, which what we're looking for is to sustain the values and share the history with the generations to come. Now, I'm just going to read some extracts of the letter sent to you by Ms. Joanna Taucher, who is an Austrian storyteller. She's unable to be here with us today. So I will just read a couple of extracts here, and then the full letter will be available on the form appendices once this is complete. So, Ms. Joanna Taucher says, in 2019, we worked on a 60-minute film about Jesus Christ. 5 main protagonists should talk. Antonia Moropoulou, professor, was one of them. I'm a writer and documentary filmmaker. I work in Austria. I'm so-called storyteller. As a scientist, Antonia should lead us into the innermost part of the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and report on her findings during the restoration. The final question had to be, did she and her interdisciplinary team find any clues as to whether this church, a World Heritage Site, really stands over the stone tomb recorded in the Bible in which Jesus Christ was laid after his death? A place and tomb that belonged to this time to a rich Jew, Joseph of Arimathea. How do we tell stories? How do we get answers? Whether we talk about World Heritage Sites, Jesus Christ, a little stone in the Sahara, or penguins, storytelling has several rules, and each storyteller, of course, follows his own method. For a filmmaker, storytelling always is limited by the minutes you get for the story. I had 8 minutes for Antonia Moropoulou and the tomb. I started as always do. I started research. Ecclesia Sancti Sepulchre, one of the most sacred monuments for Christians. Different materials were used, different cements. Master builders from other regions brought new techniques. Different colors were used in different eras. Colors with animal origin, colors with plant origin. The most diverse patterns, ornaments, the different types of architecture were always an expression of the social trends of the time, an expression of power relations, an expression of religious convictions. Hundreds, probably thousands of people, architects, builders, engineers, painters, carpenters, color specialists, rich donors have worked on this monument. They are all part of the narrative of this church. The levels tell a story. Art, architecture, influence of the culture and art of other regions. Their work is a visual narrative. The monument itself is the narrative. This church was and is a res publica. I will just stop here, and as I said, the full letter, you may find it at the end of this conference in full. So I would just like to give the floor now to Ms. Georgiadou Vasiliki, the Director and President of the Directors Board, the National Center for Social Research, and Professor at the Pantheon University. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers and Professor Moropoulou for this opportunity that ECHE, the National Center for Social Research, is a part of the Evlogon. And so far as I know, ECHE is the newest part of Evlogon. So we have to explore our role in this very challenging and innovative project. I have to talk about dissemination of values and narratives. I will give more emphasis on the values and the narratives than on dissemination. I try to explore and to share with you what has to be communicated and disseminated, actually. In other words, what is the message? So I would like to begin by repeating that I come to this discussion from the side of the social sciences. This is my focus, and the focus from this side is more on specific aspects of cultural heritage, such as meanings, relationships, discourses, and narratives within the local, the European, and the global context. The social sciences help us understand the broad context in which cultural heritage is perceived and preserved. They also offer practical tools like field research methods in order to disseminate as well. That means to collect information and analyze preferences, attitudes, values from all kinds of the communities. I mean, local, national, European, global. From this perspective, heritage is, as we all know, of course, is not only something about the past that we have to preserve, it is something we live with, and something that shapes and is shaped by the whole world. So when we talk about rehabilitation and reuse of monuments, cities, cultural landscapes, etc., we are talking about memory and identity, and we are talking about how societies remember and therefore construct and reconstruct the past, and how they live, interpret what matters to them, and how they imagine the future. The theme of this panel, the dissemination of values and narratives, raises several important questions. Some of them could be whose values are being promoted, whose narratives are being told, and how can these stories become a space for dialogue and inclusion rather than a space for conflicts and exclusion. Another issue of relevance to the social science is the potential to communicate cultural values in public and policy terms. You have already mentioned this issue. In a democratic policy and polity, mostly in a democratic framework, it is important that a policy is accepted as legitimate. This is very important. What counts as legitimate policy is closely bound to the values held by the population. Let me offer 3 very short reflections on the topic we are discussing. First, cultural heritage is never just there. It is always produced, reproduced, created, recreated, reconstructed through language, education, media, policy, within a specific and in any time different socioeconomic and geopolitical context. Every rehabilitation project is in a way a choice about what to remember, what to highlight, what to protect, and sometimes what to ignore or to forget. These choices matter because they shape how people connect to places and because they influence how communities see themselves and others within a shared historical frame. Second, narratives can be powerful tools. Cultural heritage can teach us about tolerance and respect. Narratives can include, but they can also exclude. If we tell only one story, if we present the past as something fixed, silencing alternative voices, then narratives can also exclude. In other words, cultural heritage can lead to democratization and integration, but it can also bear a non-critical use that can fuel, for example, populist emotions and non-reflexive approaches of culture. So, a central challenge is, can we make space for multiple histories? Can we open up the heritage process to those who have often been left out? This question leads me to the third point, the importance of public dialogue. If heritage is to serve society, it must be built with society, not imposed from above, but shaped through participation, through listening, through a willingness to engage with differences and even disagreements, I would say. This is where I think the social sciences have a lot to contribute. They remind us that cultural heritage is not just a thing, but a whole process. And that process must be inclusive, reflexive, and democratic. Let me add one more thought, this time connecting heritage to sustainable development, a point that has already been mentioned. From the social research point of view, the inclusion of the principles of sustainability and resilience in a cultural heritage framework led to a remarkable shift in heritage discourse in contemporary policies in which the value of cultural heritage is argued as a significant social and economic impact on society. True sustainability is not only about managing resources wisely, it is also about cultivating memory and responsibility. Cultural heritage, especially when it is visible, cared for, and meaningfully connected to its landscape, can foster a deeper sense of belonging. It reminds us that we are not isolated individuals, but participants in a shared, ongoing narrative. In this sense, monuments are not just objects of memory, they are anchors of identity, and just as importantly, practical sites of restoration on the land, on the built environment, and of the social ecosystem around them. In closing, let me say only this: at a time when our world is facing deep challenges, conflicts, displacements, climate crisis, heritage can offer more than a nostalgic orientation to the past or a popular interpretation of it. It can be a site of renewal, a place to imagine solidarity, coexistence, and peace. Cultural heritage is considered as a source of democracy and well-being. That, I believe, is a deeper promise of heritage to help us rethink and communicate and disseminate all this we have to do, and give material for reimagining our future. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Professor Georgiadou, I would like to make a point here, and this may be food for thought for later on. When we talk about cultural heritage, we talk about the tangible means, which is basically the, let's say, the archaeological sites and the buildings that we may be rehabilitating, but we also have the intangible aspect of it, which is the values that you've shared and you talked about. So later on, when we have the opportunity to discuss this kind of concepts, maybe we'd just like to focus on that, because cultural heritage is only, it's not necessarily about what you're disseminating, it's what about you omit, what you leave out. So I think this is a point that we really need to discuss as well. But having said that, let me just give the floor now to Assistant Professor Ms. Chrysakopoulou Silvana. She will be also representing Professor Petropoulos Yannis and Associate Adjunct Professor of Columbia University, Sanger, Victoria. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Because it doesn't work. I have a loud voice, don't worry.
No.
We just need to record that.
Okay.
So we'll just,
I will speak on behalf of two of my collaborators who happen to be abroad. Professor Petropoulos, who is actually the founder of the Center for Hellenic Studies here in Greece.
Έχετε adapter.
Sorry?
Adapter.
Adapter?
για την παρουσίαση. Okay, until we solve this technical glitch.
While I will be talking about.
Do we have the presentation? Can we actually share that?
Yes, you do have the slides. So as I will be.
Αν έχουμε την παρουσίαση.
I have to go to my panel session right away. So Professor Petropoulos, who is now a professor, visiting professor at the Gulbenkian Foundation in Portugal, which is the equivalent of, let's say, the Niarchos Foundation here, and Professor Victoria Sanger, who is teaching at Columbia University at the School of Architecture, and she was the curator of the Vauban exhibition in Paris.
And we are delighted to have her online because she's actually with us, I think.
This is fantastic. Okay,
thank you.
Okay, I'm very happy. I'm very happy because she she is a better expert than any of us, along with my friend now sitting in the crowd, Dr. Koutsogiannis Thodoris, who provided us with all the material of this session, because Dr. Koutsogiannis and Professor Sanger are the only historians of architecture, while we are historians of the text. So we will speak about the Parthenon and as being, let's say, the prototype of this monument dissemination, offering itself to several interpretations. So, and I will connect it with of course, with the Holy Tomb through this ideal of the connection between Athens, Rome, and Jerusalem. So there is no doubt that I refer to the first slide. There is no doubt that the Parthenon constitutes the most emblematic monument of ancient Greece and a true icon of the Athenian polis and its democracy. In the heated debates about its marbles and their modern fortune, it is often forgotten that the monumental frieze, let's proceed to slide 2, that once decorated...
You may proceed.
Okay, that once decorated the temple and is nowadays displayed in its major part in the British Museum, represents a ritual activity, namely a religious procession. The choice of a procession is extremely uncommon on monumental architecture, though not on votive reliefs. This is the slide 3 that I'm showing you. Yep. It represents the performance of the articulation of a representative community, perhaps the most emblematic one, in its socio-religious context during the Athenian classical century, which is still our prototype, although it lasted only half a century. For us, classicists, the frieze itself is cited significantly on a template designed to give a set of normative messages about Athenian culture from the heights of the Acropolis. This is slide 4. Yes. The monument, along with other important buildings such as the Stoapikili, the Odeion, and the Telesterion, were all part of Pericles' building program, as you know. And that was a very ambitious project that created monuments and spaces which were meant to interact with the citizens in the process of identity formation and values dissemination. In this process, the role of exemplary rituals such as processions was crucial and deserves to be better studied and known. Material culture and ritual action cooperated in the service of the formation of the ideals of citizenship and community that meant to have a long-lasting appeal. As I happen to teach at the University of Ioannina, which is very dear to us, I will refer to Lord Byron, who moved from Cambridge, where I have studied, to Epirus, to revive classical antiquity in modern Greece. And there he addressed the poem, The Curse of Athena, against Elgin, the other, let's say, lord, who was the British ambassador in Athens and who stole and damaged the Parthenon marbles. There, goddess Athena, as you can see, the patron of the city of Athens, curses Elgin for this sacrilege. The curse is still to be fulfilled. I remember that when I was at Cambridge, an archaeologist mentioned that the Parthenon marbles were further damaged within the British Museum because the rooms where they were hosted were also hosting some business events where people would smoke and drink. And then they had to remove 3 whole centimeters of the surface of the marbles. And that was told by a Cambridge expert in a non-official frame, but everybody knows about it. And I think that this has to become a common knowledge if we want our marbles back. Now, let's go to Lord Byron's choice, which has been a very important region for identifying the roots of Hellenic identity in Epirus. The Oracle of Dodona was revealing the divine truth, and later Nicopolis became, which was founded by the Roman Emperor Octavian. So in a way, it represents this transition from Athens to Rome as the center of the Occidental world. And there, our very well-known philosopher Epictetus moved and founded his first school. And that was the continuation of the school of what we call the Stoic school of thought, which was first founded in Athens, which was hosted in the Stoa Poikeli, which was part of the building project by Pericles. Why do I refer to that? Because it is very important to realize that the schools of philosophy were somehow already belonging into this Pericles project, and it is not by chance that Athens Academy got its name from the building itself, which then became emblematic for the Renaissance and is still emblematic in our days. And it is supposed to be the school of thought which lasted more than any other school up to now. So, in one of Plato's dialogues, in the dialogue Parmenides, we have the procession of the Panathenaea, which is depicted on the frieze of the Parthenon. We have this procession in the introduction of the most tedious, let's say, Platonic dialogue. And why do I say tedious? Because it is more addressed to scientists of the positive, let's say, sciences, since it deals with a question of the relation between the one and the many through being, which can be an ontological or a mathematical term. Anyway, let's go back to this emblematic building of the School of Athens and the notion of a school which materializes in a building. In the Renaissance, Raphael's emblematic fresco, this was about Lord Byron, and his dream. Okay, but let us go to this Athens school, Scuola di Atene, as we know it from the Raphael's fresco, which is at the core of the Athenian paideia. Not to mention that this fresco that you all know, that you all know, was commissioned by the Pope Julius II for the Stanza della Segnatura in the Vatican, which means that the School of Athens was represented as one of the main, let's say, frescoes within a religious frame. And why do I say that? Because we tend to forget about the interconnection between religion and politics since the antiquity, which should not be the case if we want to be good historians. And it is in this sense that the Greek paideia, which was meant to be revived during the Renaissance, hence the term itself, Renaissance, was disseminated thanks to the Byzantine scholars who flew from Constantinople to Venice because of the siege of the Constantinople by the Ottomans. There, they spread the Platonic philosophy all around Italy, a school of thought which accounts for the training not only of Catholic priests, such as Marsilio Ficino, but also philosophers such as his contemporary Pico della Mirandola, responsible for the so-called Renaissance Manifesto. Pico provided us with Neoplatonic interpretations of the paintings of his time, and it was in this actual room that I presented such an interpretation on Botticelli's Primavera last November in connection with Plato's Symposium and the Theaetetus, thanks to our conference organizer, Professor Tonia Moropoulou. So we can trace, let's say, this tradition back to the Quattrocento. The first official, so to say, revival of the Athens Academy was operated by the Medici, yes, by the Medici at the Villa Careggi close to Florence. And this is the fresco in the villa, in the Palazzo Pitti, which illustrates another scuola di Atene, but this time in Florence. And to finish, to go back to our initial framework on Pericles' celebration of the Athens democracy, which became monumental thanks to his architectural project crowning the Acropolis, there is no doubt that even in the modern European civilization, it still is a prototype. And we do have some illustrations by the pre-Raphaelite Alma Tadema, for instance, who shows where Phidias shows to his fellow workers the friezes of the Parthenon. And last but not least, we have a representative of the Munich school, Philipp von Foltz, who revives Pericles' funeral oration on the Acropolis, aiming to revive the glory of Athens, as it were, and still is on our passports, as our friend Mr. Koutsogiannis has noted, who has given me all this material to revive the presentation. Now, to conclude, just to let you know about our common project, those monuments of world cultural heritage can provide a framework for historical, religious, and philosophical inquiry in a wider educational context. The Library of the Greek Parliament, represented by Mr. Koutsogiannis, by Dr. Koutsogiannis, who provided us with the whole material. The University of Ioannina, which I represent along with my colleague historian, Professor Koulakiotis, who is not here. And the University of Crete, represented by Professor Athina Kavoulaki, an expert on ritual processions in antiquity, hence the initial idea of our common project, could offer through targeted actions and courses the opportunity for contemporary people to connect with the principles and meanings expressed by those monuments and develop a new relationship with them. Thank you. This is just the outline of our project. And we now may proceed to Victoria Sanger material on the new Parthenons in the...
I think once it's online, she could actually do the presentation, or would like to do that for her.
If she's, can we connect? We don't have the time. Okay,
so
because I have to go to the other.
Do we need to conclude this panel?
Yes, yes. Yeah.
Okay. Well, since Ms. Victoria Sanger is online, έχουμε την κυρία Sanger, παρακαλώ. Είναι online. Yeah.
I just have a few slides to show.
Okay, just briefly.
On facades, that's all. On facades of the Acropolis.
She's online. I think she deserves to have to just give us an overview. Allow me, Professor. May I take this? I will cut down on my questions. Okay. Okay, Professor. Thank you very much for being with us. The floor is yours, so there will be very limited time, so if you could just be as brief as possible. Thank you. Professor?
I'm sorry, I thought that Professor Christokopoulou was going to be presenting the slides.
Well, she has done so, but if you would like to say a few words, you are more than welcome to do so, but you just need to be very brief. Thank you.
All right. Well, coming from Columbia University, I just wanted, which is a rather embattled moment in American academics right now, but our foundations are very much, our campus was very much influenced by Greece and was put into place as a kind of American Acropolis.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we don't have you on camera. Is it possible for you to operate your camera and just turn it on? Is it possible?
Well, I can just show myself. I don't have the slides.
Great, thank you.
No, I just wanted to comment that, we have a core curriculum where we have great foundations of classical literature and archaeology as part of the undergraduate foundations. Our campus is very much influenced by antiquity, and it was put into place as a kind of acropolis of learning. And I think that the place of the university in the city, which is also rather embattled right now in terms of funding, in terms of urbanism, in terms of its place in Harlem, is very much being re-studied now. And I think that looking back to the classics is going to be very important to finding a path forward through these difficult times. And I understand that there was a slide deck. I haven't seen it, but perhaps with some important replicas of antiquity in America. I think the most famous one is the life-size replica in Nashville, Tennessee, of the Parthenon, which is shows the admiration. But of course, there are many buildings in Washington D.C. They're also very important, such as the Lincoln Memorial. So that's really the comments I had to make, and I look forward to seeing how I can contribute to these efforts in the future.
Sure, we would like to thank you very much for your comments. Professor Christokopoulou has actually made a great presentation representing both you and Professor Petropoulos. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Do you have 5 minutes for a question to each one of our, because we also have Mr. Katsarelis, who needs to actually take his floor. So I'd just like to be...
Sure. Thank you very much for inviting me and taking part in this conversation, and congratulations for the organizers for this initiative. So I was asked to give a 5-minute statement, so I have prepared a text to read for you in order to limit myself within the constraints of time. So cultural heritage with its profound narratives and timeless values acts as a bridge across time, connecting diverse communities, cultivating shared understanding, and fostering an appreciation for the rich tapestry of our global human experience. How do these topics relate to me? As previously mentioned, I serve as a manager of academic programs and events at Harvard University Center for Hellenic Studies in Greece. Although my role is administrative in educational management, my academic background is in classics, so I have a classics PhD, and my research interests lie in exploring connection between people, ideas, and cultures from antiquity to the present. So in a way, I possess some knowledge of Asian cultures and their narratives, and I have hands-on experience in organizing educational initiatives and fostering collaborative efforts, including how academic institutions and programs can contribute to the dissemination and preservation of cultural heritage. So with these capacities and from this perspective, I would like to emphasize only 2 items. First, the use of places of cultural value as educational tools and the importance of study abroad initiatives that enable individuals to engage with cultural heritage. And second, then an enhancement of preservation efforts through international collaboration between academic and cultural institutions. Starting with the first topic. Places of cultural value, such as the Asian Agora and Mycenae, serve as invaluable educational resources. They provide opportunities for immersive learning, allowing individuals to experience history and culture firsthand. Let me provide you with some examples from our programs with the Harvard Center for Hellenic Studies, which include students mostly from Harvard and other US universities, and in general, international students. During a course on Athenian democracy and the philosophy of Socrates, we visit the ancient site of the Agora, where Socrates was compelled to drink hemlock in 399 BCE. Here we read and often reenact Socrates' final words from Plato's dialogue Phaedo, capturing that pivotal moment. In this context, the monument and the site become integral to the experiential learning process, which would otherwise rely solely on imagination of the students. In another example, by visiting sites and monuments, students often engage in discussions surrounding their preservation, promotion, and conservation. For instance, another course includes debates about the return of the Parthenon marbles, which students contemplate by visiting the Acropolis site and examining the originals and replicas at the Acropolis Museum. Integrating these sites into the educational experience fosters values and narratives essential for protecting the monuments and the symbolism they embody. Study abroad programs offer participants the chance to immerse themselves in different cultures and gain first-hand experiences on places of cultural value. In this setting, the class is conducted on site, and the monument or cultural space becomes more than just a reference point. It assumes a central role as program participants engage with, feel, and perceive the space. They sense its energy, imagine its past, and consider its current state. I firmly believe there is no better way to convey the values and stories of a monument in an educational context than by bringing the learner and the teacher directly into the space. Students leave Greece as more informed ambassadors of the monument and the sites and the accompanying symbolism and narratives. By exploring these sites, students, educators, and travelers overall can engage with historical narratives in a way that textbooks alone cannot deliver. Thus, study abroad programs involving students from around the globe can be an effective means for promoting monuments along with their values and narratives while connecting them with the international community. Going to the second topic. Preserving places of cultural value requires efforts that extend beyond national borders. Academic and cultural institutions play a critical role in these endeavors by bringing together experts from various fields to develop and implement preservation strategies. On our end, at the Center for Hellenic Studies, Harvard University, we support a significant number of postdoctoral researchers through various research fellowship programs, with many focusing on Hellenic studies and some involved in the conservation of monuments or archaeological sites and excavations. These researchers, by receiving our fellowships, not only gain support to continue their work, but also access a wider community connected to Harvard or international forums that we organize, coordinate, or contribute to. This often leads to collaborations between institutions and entities, such as partnerships between universities or between a specific service of the Ministry of Culture in Greece and an international research center. These examples illustrate how international collaborations facilitate the exchange of knowledge, best practices, and resources, thus making preservation efforts more effective and sustainable, and fostering a global network of professionals dedicating to safeguarding cultural heritage for future generations. Clearly, this is a subject that warrants much deeper analysis. To sum up, I have only focused on certain aspects and provided a few examples within my allotted time of 5 minutes. I assume that everyone here in this venue recognizes the importance of World Heritage and heritage sites and monuments as repositories of cultural values and historical narratives. I also believe that we agree on the necessity of preserving these sites to maintain their integrity and authenticity, as well as the vital roles that institutions, organizations, and the state play in promoting and supporting the dissemination of cultural heritage. Understanding this, we need now to consider how we can each contribute to this goal from our respective roles, focusing on initiatives that support the preservation and appreciation of cultural heritage. In any case, I'm encouraged by the high awareness and enthusiasm I have witnessed so far in this conference, and I look forward to hearing from my fellow panelists as well as from you, the audience, on how this dialogue can contribute and become even more productive. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Katsourelis. I think we're running out of time. We are actually, we're 10 minutes late. But before we sum this up, I would just like to ask from every and each one of you, just for a wrap-up comment, but you just need to be really brief. So starting with Ms. Tsitsanoudis, and then we'll just move on to the next of the speakers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moutsios, and I'm really run off time because I have to be in Hall 1. I have a speech there, so I'm going to be very quick. I think that we have had many important conclusions about how to work on dissemination of cultural monuments. I would like to be allowed to let me really insist on what I said before, that we have to focus on the new generation and what new generation would like to hear from us. I think it's an obligation, it's a holy obligation from all of us to watch things, to see things from their point of view. Things are changing, but we have surely constant values. So we have to find out what could be the most effective, who could be the most effective way to reach to the new generation. And I think that, as I said before, it is the most demanding audience. I think that we have to work very, very hard, and this is such a big deal, such a big chance to be gathered all here by by Professor Moropoulou and to discuss on these things. How we will go closer to the young people who are very distracted. We are all distracted with our phones. It's a new prison.
Well, that's the whole point. Use your phone, just share your message and what you've been doing. All of you with Professor Moropoulou's team and all of you, the scientists, I think you have achieved that. You're already there. So I was just like...
use our imagination is my final word. We have to use our imagination to find new ways to come closer to youth and young people.
Thank you. Now, Ms. Labropoulou, you've talked about using the Evlogon as a repository, a data organization and management tool, but you gave us some pretty clear examples of how you reached out to younger generations, making the heritage sustainable and something that we will all have something to refer to in the future.
So as it was now discussed, the young audience is the future, indeed. And we need to integrate education in this, education and digital transition as well, like the digital games that we produce through a Edicula project, like the hands-on that we produced through a Edicula project, but to a different audience. Our hands-on experience was not for the secondary education, but we can provide that as well. But today I realize that to better understand the approaches that we should be making at Evlogon, we certainly need both the theoretical and the social background, and that was very precious for us today. The discussion between the theoretical, the humanities, the social sciences, and the engineering and natural sciences. That is what is transdisciplinarity.
Thank you for that. So knowledge should be shared, otherwise it will just get lost in the future. So when we talk about knowledge, it's something intangible, Professor Ioiadou, and the whole point is how do you put it into a package, if you like, so they can just move it on to the next generations, but using the tangible, the sites as well, in order to form a vehicle, if you like, to combine both the tangible and the intangible. How can we achieve that?
This is the question of the 1 million, let's say. I don't have an answer to your question because it is actually, we have to explore this, how to do this. But let me put...
If I may rephrase then the question, what insights can you actually share about community engagement in the preservation efforts of cultural heritage and its importance in ensuring the lasting impact?
I would say that experience is very important. Experience, the living experience is very important for transmitting these values.
So being part of it.
Yes, of course. This is important, the living experience, and we have to find out how to connect and to find a link with our audience, the younger and the whole society.
Thank you for that. Now, Ms. Christakopoulou, we've heard you talking about the religious aspects, the philosophical aspects of all these great monuments that have been rehabilitated in the past. How can we take this into a single form and just move it on, pass it on to the new generations? Because it's something philosophical, it's something that is really distant to most of us.
Actually, what I try to...
Can you just turn on your microphone?
Yes. What I try to stress is the connection to the place and to the time. So though I do come from a theoretical background, I teach philosophy, to us philosophers of antiquity, it's extremely important to read the Platonic dialogues, let's say, where they were first created. And what we were thinking with our colleagues, the colleagues I mentioned, Professor Koulakiotis, Ioanna, Professor Athina Kavoulaki in Crete, is that we were thinking of groups of students, not only students of our schools, but students in a larger sense, who could visit those monuments. And there we could give courses exactly as they were given in antiquity. And we could also refer to the continuation of this tradition since it started up to today, which still goes on.
Well, that sounds really interesting incentive. I think you just need to share that with the Ministry of Education, if you like. Ms. Labopoulou,
yes,
comment?
If I may, in the digital exhibition that we produced, you didn't actually have to visit Jerusalem to understand the project. You could visit it in the Byzantine Museum. So that is why the multispectral modeling and transdisciplinarity is important. The digital transition is important. We don't need to go actually there. Of course, we need hands-on. We need study abroad programs, as Mr. Katsikarelis said, but we can do that through the digital transition, through the new models of dissemination.
So technology is there for us to use. So I'm just moving on by just getting the pass from Ms. Christakopoulou. So how can we use the Harvard School in order to disseminate all this information, all this knowledge, and somehow use it to extend and disseminate the cultural heritage in the future? Because I know you talked about visiting those sites, but are there any other ways to do that?
Sure. As I mentioned, we can implement this goal both through academic programs on sites and hands-on activities, but also establishing collaboration between institutions. And this is what we do nowadays. I firmly believe that this is a time we're experiencing momentum in Greece right now. We are in a period of extroversion, I would say, for universities. And I work on that, so I can see that we can foster this type of collaborations easier now. It's something that we can implement nowadays better than in the past, I would say. today, and we should take advantage of this in order to disseminate also the values and the narratives of monuments and sites of cultural heritage. But following back to what you said, I believe that participants who experience in situ the sites and the monuments are the best ambassadors for themselves, because they don't gain only in the knowledge and the history of the symbolism of this specific site, but they also grasp its contemporary dimension, the needs revolving about this space and the challenges they face today.
Mr. Katsarelis, thank you very much. So we just need to wrap this up. Professor?
One moment before you wrap up.
Please do so.
I want to thank you all for your valuable contribution, because this is an absolutely new discussion. It is the first time ever it is developed. So thank you very much. And I want to touch only one point, the point of the democratic features of communication to disseminate values and narrations. From all the discussions and from all my experiences, permit me to say that we will have a young generation only if we will construct the environment to give them the opportunity to develop their own relationship and their own conception. How do they conceive the monument, the cultural heritage, the civilization, history? It's the only way. And believe me, there is something you didn't say, but I have to say it. And this is that we have contradictory situations, realities, interests, and truths. The most important is to expose them. The actual truth is not to cover one conception or another and to reveal a supposed synthesis. It is to reveal the contradictions. I mean, and with this I'm finishing. The very moment I was going out from the Tomb of Christ chamber to the chamber of the angel to make a declaration to the National Geographic, and while the non-destructive tests were seized due to the energy emerging from the Tomb of Christ, I was saying to myself, and I was in an actual contradiction, that I am a scientist representing the generation of the uprising Polytechnion, the National Technical University of '73. How am I going to say the instruments were seized? And I said, but that's important to say the truth. And through this contradiction, saying that the tomb of Christ is alive and is communicating with the humanity as a whole, then it was opened another discussion with people around us. And I think this is the key issue. Thank you very much.
I think you've made a really critical point here, because the edicule of Tomb of Jesus that you have rehabilitated with the assistance of all the scientists brings up issues such as religion, contradictions, cultures, ethnicities, that they all come together, but you all manage to work together and tell the story of what you have achieved, what you have found, and with utter respect. And that's what we need to bear in mind, that everything happens respecting each other's culture and saying that in the future, so we can just all have our culture, be it Greeks, Muslims, Christians, you name it. So I would personally like to thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to moderate this fantastic panel with all these experts here. I just want to wish you well and to anything that you do from now on. And let me just say that the rehabilitation of the Edicule of Christ serves as an emblematic paradigm for the sustainable preservation of both modern and historic buildings. And it calls for an integrated methodology of diagnosis, monitoring and control, utilizing a holistic approach that capitalizes on transdisciplinary and collaboration among various scientific and technical fields, as well as stakeholders. Thank you very much for attending. Hope to see you next year. Who knows?